Belief comes before ability. The external world has this backwards. The belief that you can do something is a prerequisite for trying.
This drives me insane. So you mentioned earlier, like, you don't know how normal people are. And I'm going to remember that line because people are like, over and over again, when you have somebody like the founder of Four Seasons we talked about, hey, Chris, we're friends. Like, I'm going to tell you my dream. And my dream is to build the collection, not just one, a collection of the world's greatest hotels. And you're like, Izzy, you have no money. You've never built a hotel. Like, what are you talking? Like, why would you even think this is possible? What you need to do is prove it first, and then we'll believe in you. It's like, no, that's ass backwards. Belief always comes before ability. There's a story where Elon's on, he tries to buy a rocket. At first, he thought he was just going to shoot like this like garden, for lack of a better word, to Mars on somebody else's rocket. And because he was trying to like draw attention to the fact that, hey, NASA is not innovating. We're stuck in like low Earth orbit. Like, why aren't we trying to get to Mars? Why aren't we trying to, colonize the galaxy? And he's goes to Russia. They like treat him like shit. And he's on the way back and he just realizes, hey, we're going to build our own rocket. And people laugh at him. They're like, oh, this internet kid. Because, he's 29, 28. He's like, what are you, internet kid? You can't do that. His belief came before his ability. He believed that he could do that, and then he went out and proved it. Now, when I say belief comes before ability, it doesn't mean you just sit there and be like, I'm great, and you don't do it. No, you do the work necessary to achieve what you want. But if you're waiting for the external world to like push, encourage you, or and edge you on, like, it's impossible.
So I wasn't sure what direction you were going in with that, because one reading of that sounds fantastic, and I wholeheartedly disagree. But the one from the outside world, I think, is absolutely bang on. So the reason that I disagree, if you were to say belief comes before ability as in self-belief, I wrote an essay this week about it, so I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
An ode to people who don't believe in themselves. What comes first, belief or action? Do you need to believe that you can do a thing before you do it? Fake it until you make it is one option, but incredibly hard if you're introspective or have low self-belief and high standards. So what about make it until you fake it? Here are some lessons I've learned. You can believe you're not worthy of a thing and still attain it. You can be adamant that your efforts are going to go badly and still succeed. You can grip and grasp and fear and it ruin the enjoyment and be totally unwarranted and things still go well. You can have no self-belief and show up anyway and still win. You can want more for yourself without knowing exactly what that looks like. You can doubt the process, question your talent, be uncertain that you're making progress, disparage your accomplishments, permanently feel like you're not working hard enough no matter how hard you work, never give yourself a break, fail to fully feel gratitude, be terrified of never reaching your goals, and still end up in a place that your 20-year-old self could not imagine you'd ever get to. Self-belief is overrated. Generate evidence.
Yeah, I would you could say when I say belief comes before ability, I mean self-belief. Yeah. But that line I would disagree, where it's like self-belief is overrated. I think it's the highest order bit. There's actually one area where I disagree with Steve Jobs, and he talks about like the highest order bit. It's from like computer science, where it's like the most important part of the system, right? And this is like a complete like oversimplification of it. But and his whole thing was like the highest order bit is that like you love what you do. And for all the reasons that we discussed earlier, you'll keep doing it for a long time. You'll persevere and everything else. And I love what I do. I know you love what you do. And I agree, like it's super important. I think it makes life easier. You used the phrase like you're swimming downstream earlier, I think is a great way to put that. And so I was thinking about that because the Steve Jobs Archive, which is run by Steve's widow, just released this free book you can read online called Make Something Wonderful, Steve Jobs in His Own Words. And it's remarkable. And so like I've read it a bunch of times. And, he talks about this in there. That's where I discovered the highest order bit part. And then I was thinking about it more and more, and I was just like, well, no, that's not like what comes first. It's like the belief that you can actually do something that's valuable to the world, that like is an act of service and makes the world a better place. And I think me and you might be good examples. It's like, how many years were you doing the podcast before anybody gave a damn?
3.5.
Mine was 5.5. Why were you still doing it?
Because I was swimming downstream.
Because you believed that you could, do it. The belief that you had that you could actually make something worth people's time and listening, right?
Yes.
That lag was a couple years before the world's like, yes, Chris, we agree with you.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about self-belief, because I believe that the thing that I'm doing right now is of value to the world, and the world just as yet hasn't recognized that. It's like an interesting pivot on self-belief. The belief, I know that I can make it, I've never had.
Yeah.
Ever. I am the best avatar for somebody that is permanently looking at his feet going, how the fuck am I stood here? Like, how did this happen? Very much don't believe that you're worthy of a thing. Still attained it. Disparage your accomplishments.
Yeah.
But still get them. Grip, grasp, fear, ruin the enjoyment. All of that. Like the entire, for me, journey up until probably only the last 2 years, basically moving to America, was sort of riven with self-doubt and uncertainty and am I even doing this right? But I enjoyed the thing that I was doing, and I knew that I was good at that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that there was going to be some outcome. So I think it's, what is the sort of self-belief directed at?
Yeah.
In a way, directed at the outcome of, I know that I can do this thing well and I enjoy it all day. Directed at, this is going to reach something that some portion of people will accuse of being success. Never really once.
So I've heard you say that perspective on your show before. I would say, like, interacting with you in person, you come across unbelievably.
You've only known me for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Much bigger mountain of evidence.
Yeah. Good point.
After a while, if imposter syndrome continues to persist, even though you keep disproving it.
Do you have imposter syndrome today?
No.
Okay.
No more. I'm about to step out on stage in front of 3,500 people in London. I just came back from Oz, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Right? Other side of the planet.
Yeah.
And no, not anymore. But that, like, I need to really write this out because I haven't yet. I'm just such a fucking poster boy for somebody that would have abiding imposter syndrome. Like, very uncertain, very unsure of himself, of his place in the world, a need for validation, a desire to be seen as competent, like all of the thing, all, you know, just like the fucking ingredients to make a really beautiful imposter syndrome casserole. Yeah. And it's dropped away and it's gone. And it's not gone through any weird combination of mindset changes and sort of conscious reframing. It's gone because it's been crushed under a fucking neutron star worth weight of evidence.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't keep holding on to a belief that things are going to go badly, or that I'm not good enough, or that I don't have the talent, or that even though I feel like I'm working hard, I know that I should be working infinitely harder. Because I'm just like, how many times do you want to roll the dice and it come up 6, like over and over and over and over again? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I really want to write it out because I think that there's a lot of people who have a level of self-doubt so great that they struggle to even connect with like an inspirational story because it feels like it's a different.
I agree completely. I think a lot of people accuse entrepreneurs of being arrogant, and of course they are. Like, you'd have to be arrogant to think like, oh, I don't have to work for somebody else. Like, I can literally take something that doesn't exist and like bring it to the world. But my issue with that is, like, we don't have an epidemic of arrogance. We have an epidemic of people that don't believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. And so the weird thing about the early days of the podcast, you know, these people that I'm reading about and telling stories about, they're crazy people. Like, they are all crazy people. And yet I kept hearing the same review, the same email, the same DM. I find your podcast so comforting. I'm like, I was like, oh, there's a million, you know, of us out there that are like, this is me too. And that's the biggest key, where like the reason the biographies are important and life stories in general is not because like we're talking about Francis Ford Coppola's life or Steve Jobs' life or any of the lives we've talked about. It's like, no, you see yourself in them.
Correct.
That's the key.
Dude, I've realized this over the last couple of years. We don't fall in love with other people who are perfect. We fall in love with other people who we see ourselves in their flaws. And there's been a few times on the show or going out for dinner and meeting people or whatever, I'm like, this person's, you know, really smart or really interesting or really insightful, and I just don't care. And I have nothing to talk to them about. And I realized it's that I can't find hooks in their shortcomings that I can latch onto, that either I'm unable to see them for some reason, they're being hidden.
They're incentivized to hide them.
They don't align with the way that I see the world, perhaps, cultural differences, stuff like that. But yeah, what we really, really resonate with is somebody else who has a shortcoming that we see ourselves in. You see a little version of yourself in Chris Bumstead when he cries on stage, or when he's uncertain about whether or not he's going to win. You see a little bit of yourself in Kobe when he snaps his Achilles and he's unsure about where he's going, but then he pulls himself back around. Like whoever it is, like you see and that I think is reassuring to a lot of people. It's certainly reassuring to me when I realized that the most interesting person in the room, in fact, this was born out of our trip to Miami for George's birthday. The most interesting person in the room isn't the most interesting person in the room. It's the person who makes everybody else feel like they're the most interesting person in the room. So you don't need to worry about not being charismatic. You just need to make other people feel charismatic. Like I called it inverse charisma. That you know that story. Was it Winston Churchill's wife who went to go and see the two different American presidents? She said, I sat down with one of them, and after a dinner being next to him, I left feeling like he was the smartest person in the world. And I sat down a couple of months later with his opponent, and after that dinner, I left feeling like I was the smartest person in the world. Like, who do you want to be? I want to be the sort of person that makes other people feel like the smartest person in the world. And the beautiful thing about this idea is that so many people want to be liked and charismatic, but feel like they don't have any charisma or likability. But you don't need to. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about what you do to other people. And that is so much easier. If you're you don't need to be interesting. You just need to be fucking interested in somebody else.
I love that you said that, because I say the most interesting people are the most interested. And like the people that I'm drawn to, right? Because to your point, like you meet so many people, and in some cases, like you admire them from afar. And I think one of the biggest benefits is like, and this is why I'm, again, evangelist for reading biographies and autobiographies, is because like we're incentivized in our day-to-day to like make things seem better. Like you were just talking about the health problems that, you're like, hey, I'm not ready to talk about this, but when I am, I'll talk about it. But like from the outside, people are like, Chris has it everything. He's handsome, he's in great shape, he's world famous, like he's got one of the best podcasts in the world. And you're like, yeah, but you haven't seen the shit that I've been going through for the last like 12 months. And in the biographies, like you see that, because they're not, people don't sit down to write a biography when they're like 30, 35, 40, when they're still in it. There's some weird genetic thing where it's like, I know I'm going to die soon. I want to pass down everything I know in this book. It's an act of service to the next generation of entrepreneurs. I think is really important. And that's when I just did the Elon episode on the SpaceX book, one of the things I said is it's like, the reason that you guys should read this book is because like you have, it's not only just Elon a genius, but all the early SpaceX employees are genius. And the whole book is these geniuses can't figure shit out. And like they're running into problem after problem after problem. And then, 6 years later, they figure it out. That is so good for you. It's like, oh, if that guy, if that guy couldn't do that, then it makes sense. Like I feel better about myself. Again, it's technically a story about Elon and SpaceX, but you make it about yourself. I just think that's human nature.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Function. You probably want to know what's happening inside of your body, but getting your blood work comprehensively analyzed can cost thousands, which is why I partnered with Function. For just $500, you receive extensive lab work on over 100 carefully selected biomarkers, giving you insights into your hormone profile, cardiovascular health, organ function, and much more. Their team of expert physicians will then analyze the data and give you actionable advice to improve your health and lifespan. Monitoring things like your testosterone can make a massive difference to your energy, performance, and happiness, and being able to see that data charted out over the course of a year with actionable insights to actually improve them is exactly what you get with Function. Dr. Andrew Huberman is their scientific advisor, and Dr. Mark Hyman is their chief medical officer, so you can trust that the data and insights you receive are scientifically sound and reliable. Right now, you can discover where your health stands and take action with Function's expert health assessments by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modern wisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, you will love the full-length podcast in all its glory, which is available right here. Go on, press it.